So we're actually writing things down, finding out 5, 10, 15 years out, what do you want that to look like? And then kind of building backwards and working on a strategy. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yep. First is vision, then strategy. But really, it's that asking that question, once we get them to think further out, is what you're currently doing, where you're currently at, going to get you the vision that you want. And
Yeah.
if not, then we need to potentially pivot and make a change. Now, then we'd have to ask some much more detailed questions on what that pivot might be. But the first step would be getting that vision.
Welcome to the LandLife Podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LandLife Podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, don't forget, if you're getting value from this podcast, do me a solid, like, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating. If you get time, and it shouldn't take too long, write a 1 or 2 sentence line on iTunes, Spotify, just a quick review. Hey man, I like the podcast. Your guest Josh today was awesome. I want to hear more from him. Something like that. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, just something nice and easy. Guys, at the end of this podcast, stick around to the end, because if our guest Josh today says something that resonates with you and you're thinking, you know what, I like this guy, how can I continue the conversation? He's going to leave ways that you can contact him. Social media handles, emails, things like that, ways you can get in touch with Josh so that you guys can keep that conversation going. Guys. So today our guest, Josh Kosnick, Kairos Coaching and Consulting, and he runs a podcast, the Spartan Leadership Podcast. That sounds pretty badass. Josh, how's it going, man?
It's going great, PJ. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on, share some value, hopefully drop some nuggets that everyone's excited to hear about today.
Absolutely. What part of the country are you in?
Madison, Wisconsin. So a little bit, actually, not so much snow here today. We're getting actually quite a bit of rain, melting the snow away.
Yeah, so I'm in Denver, and we haven't had snow for like a week. We're almost at a week without snow. So I think Wednesday, we fly out. So, of course, Wednesday, we're supposed to get snow, because every single time I'm getting ready to get on a plane, you got to check the weather, keep checking the weather, because they may cancel your flight here in Denver for snow. I'm sure you guys are pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we get through whatever, it seems, right? Because we're used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if the South gets snow, or even if it's like just a minuscule little amount, like everything shuts down because they're not prepared for it. They don't have salt trucks down there, plows down there, et cetera. So
yeah,
it's all good.
They abandon cars on the highways too. And so I didn't really understand why you would abandon your car and walk away, but I guess they all have rear-wheel drive cars. So I was down in Texas. Yeah, I was down in Texas last week, and the guy, the Uber driver was explaining. I was like, so why does everybody leave their cars in the middle of the road when it's just a little bit of snow? And it's not a lot. I mean, it's like an inch of snow, and they're like, life's over. I'm out.
Yep.
Like the zombie apocalypse has happened. I'm walking now. So they get a little blurry here. There we go. They had just flat out abandoned their cars. So we need to get 4-wheel drive in every place in the country. I almost ordered a truck from somewhere in the Southeast once, and I was like, dude, this is the same truck, but it's like like a third of the price off. I was like, man, that's a good deal. I don't know why it's such a good deal, but hell, let's buy it. And so I look at a little further though, and it's a rear-wheel drive pickup truck.
They're not going to work so well in Denver.
What am I going to do with a rear-wheel drive pickup truck? So anyway, Josh, you're a coach. You got a podcast. You were in the financial industry, college football player. You got all kinds of cool stuff. So kind of catch us up to where we're at now. Like, give us kind of a background story of who you were and what got us to the point you're at here right now.
Yeah, so you mentioned a few things. So I went to college to continue playing football. I did not go to college to go to college. So that was mistake number one. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind as one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. I did not have the right end in mind, because after I was done playing football, which I played for a couple of years, it lost its luster for me and I stopped playing. I mentally checked out of school as well. And it wasn't, a semester more, and I was just going to work essentially. So my first job out of school is I had worked retail sales at Circuit City, for those that are old enough to remember,
Nice.
or possibly read In Good to Great, Jim Collins' phenomenal book. Circuit City was highlighted in there. And then switched over to Best Buy, where I was a sales manager. And I was making good money for, 20 to 24 years old doing that. But what I realized quickly at 24 was that I didn't want someone in control of my time or my money. And when you're working for someone else, that is, you're controlled by both of those things.
Yeah.
Right. They tell you when to show up, they tell you when you can leave, and they tell you how much you're going to make or how much you're worth. So the tipping point for me, or straw that broke the camel's back, is I was running a top 3 store in the country, and I knew other people, sales managers in my district, that were getting paid more than I was just because they're older than me. And I was whipping their ass month in and month out. And so I go to my store manager and I asked for a raise, and I was told no. And I was like, wait, so performance doesn't matter. You can, I could finish 300th in the country and I'd still make the same and we'd be fine. And they're like, well, no, what I mean, you got a bright future here. All the,
Don't quit, please.
Yeah, all the blah, blah, blah. And I knew in that moment that I wasn't wired to be told, A, what to do, B, what I was worth, and when to show up and when to leave.
Yeah.
So I quit within a couple weeks after that. And I started my career in financial services as a financial advisor, worked my way to wealth management advisor, and was really having a ton of fun building my own practice. And because you're having such an impact on people when you're helping people plan their fun, because we're not taught that stuff in school, right? We're not taught how to even balance a checkbook, let alone manage our credit cards and anything else that comes out. In fact, stupid story, and I should have known better because my dad was in financial services, but, I was too proud to ask him anything. Freshman year, you got those credit card stands, and you sign up for.
I do know about those.
Card, and you get a free T-shirt. You get this free T-shirt, and you get like a $500 or $1,500 limit. Well, very quickly, my credit card was filled up with beer, and and I had to work to pay that off as well without going to dad because, again, too proud. But anyhow, so a little short story. But anyhow, going to financial services, I also was leading people at that time. I was recruiting and developing some people as a mentor. And I found actually I was having more joy doing that than I was building my own financial services career up. So I was finding more joy in leading others and helping others succeed than I was in just seeing my own success. So I started on this leadership path while building that practice. And the Fortune 100 company that I represented asked me to take over for my father in the territory. So I had to buy him out, bought the firm. I had over 100 advisors and 250 employees thereabouts. And that was age 35 that I sold my personal practice, bought the larger firm, and was doing some great things with that firm for a few years. And without getting too deep into that story, the company and I had a breakup, let's just say. They had to buy me out, and that was at age 41. And so I walked away from that business. And again, long story short, I really enjoyed it. I got the opportunity for 6 months as I was negotiating my exit to really assess, what did I really love about that past role? What did I really hate about that past role? Create somewhat of a T-chart, pros and cons list, or just stuff I wanted to look at for the future. And what I really loved was pouring into people, helping others succeed, and building them up from the ground up. Sometimes, they started with nothing. Sometimes they started with a little leg up. Either way is helping them become, what I like to refer as like more superhuman. And so I started foraying into the coaching part of it. Is like, okay, well, I can coach financial advisors. I can coach people on their everyday lives get better spiritually, personally, mentally, emotionally, physically, and then, of course, financially and professionally. So I really focus on that as a coach, is not just, hey, we're going to be kind of a sniper and go right after professionally or right after financially. We're going to focus on the whole human being, because if we can build you as a whole human, you're going to be a better husband, you're going to be a better father, you're going to be a better spouse or partner in a business, whatever it may be. So we're attacking all those different areas, and that's where I focused on as a coach. The other thing I did with that is bought 80 acres, which you're seeing me, if you're watching video today, you're seeing me in the house.
Nice.
where we host leadership retreats. I partner with a neuroscientist on that. So it's not just my business experience, it's not just my leadership skills. We're actually putting science to it so that when we actually help people, we're helping them mentally, now with the neuroscience, and proven ways to mentally unlearn some of our familial stuff that's been generationally passed down to us, traumas or otherwise, some of the societal stuff that we've been taught that we need to unlearn as well, and helping them root that stuff out and breed new neural pathways in that are more helpful and useful for their lives going forward.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot to unpack. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
We'll skip circuit sit. No, this is great. So let's give us some examples then of some things. Let's say my dad, my parents, I grew up my whole life. My parents, they go to work every day, right? That's all they do. They go to work, they come home. They go to work, they come home. Hey, how was school? It was good, cool. And you move on. Now, I know a lot of guys that didn't have an example that said, here's what you should do. You should go into financial services. You should go maybe start something for yourself, build something. How are you able to convey that to say, let's say a 40-year-old guy who's been told his whole life the opposite?
So let me understand that a little bit. Tell them or advise them how to get out of what they've been currently doing just
Absolutely.
to go to the 9-to-5 job, because that's okay.
Yeah.
So first I'd start more with a vision exercise. Is we got to look out. Again, Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. I did that wrong in college. Since then, I've been doing it a lot better after I read 7 Habits and continue to build some of those practices and had some great mentors and coaches in my life. But what we really want to do is, okay, where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as far as I can get them to think out? If they're 40 and we got, 20 to 25 year runway, God willing, that they are going to work, how do you want those next 25 years to look? Let's just say at 40, you're at halftime.
Yeah.
Right. You're really at halftime of your career. So at that point, what do you want the next steps of your life to look like? Sometimes people talk about what's their passion project. Well, we got to also provide as men, right? We got to provide. So you can't just have a passion that doesn't make money. So when those two things converge, right? Like the podcast. Yeah. Same. My podcast doesn't make any money either because I'm giving back to people. Right now, someday that may change for you or I. We become big time podcasters and we want to market or want to do something that we believe in. But right now, that's not the case. So we're giving back to others to make sure that they can learn and have some impact and possibly change their lives from it. The other thing, or the reason I do it as well, is so my kids always have my voice. If something, because I worked in financial planning, I also dealt with life insurance. I also delivered checks to people that died way too soon. Mm-hmm. So I know my own mortality very well and know that I'm not immune to potentially checking out too soon. So my kids will always have my voice, whether it's listening to your show or my show or any other show that I go on.
Yeah.
So bottom line, going back to that 40-year-old is like, okay, what do we want over the next 5 to 10 years? Let's say personally, professionally, and financially. Because if we talk about those 3 things, and we can get to physical and emotional and all that other stuff later, I think the top 3 then is personally, professionally, financially. If we're sitting here 10 years from today and we're able to look back and, okay, it's February 27th, 2033, we're sitting 10 years out and we're able to look back, what do we want to have checked off the list? What do we want to have accomplished in that time frame? I just want to, forget whether you think it can happen or not. What do you want to happen?
Yeah.
And then once we get them to think out as far as possible, okay, let's back into 5 years. Let's back into 3 years. Now we can get down to 1 year. Now we can start making some decisions. Is where you're at currently going to get you to where you want to go? And if not, where is the place that you want to go? So like when I was recruiting for financial services, my goal wasn't to try and plug a square peg into a round hole. My goal is to mutually find out, meaning you, PJ, and me mutually find out if what I'm offering gets you to where you want to go. And again, I was recruiting for financial planners back then. Yeah. Now I'm just loosely asking that question to a business owner or a high-end professional. Do they want to stay in that current position based on the trajectory of where they're going, or do we need to pivot and make a change?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So we're actually writing things down, finding out 5, 10, 15 years out, what do you want that to look like? And then kind of building backwards and working on a strategy. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yep. First is vision, then strategy. But really, it's that asking that question, once we get them to think further out, is what you're currently doing, where you're currently at, going to get you the vision that you want? And
Yeah.
if not, then we need to potentially pivot and make a change. Now, then we'd have to ask some much more detailed questions on what that pivot might be. But the first step would be getting that vision.
Okay. Where do you see people getting hung up? I can see a vision being super exciting, right? Like I'm going to be, I don't know, we're in Arte, I'm going to have a private jet, right? That can be a vision. A lot of guys in Arte, you know, and in a lot of guys think, man, that's the height of success, right? So where are people getting hung up? I can see people getting hung up at the vision level and never being able to really physically actually work their way back. But you're a pro. When you actually work with these guys, where are they getting hung up?
A lot of them get hung up on they don't think they are worthy of that vision.
Wow.
So a lot of times they won't even be able to think far enough out to say that so yeah, in Arate, with us that are all around this professional development, self-development, personal development world, yes, we all think like that. I would say the vast majority of society does not think like that. And I would say the vast majority of your listeners do not think like that. And they get hung up in, I'm not worthy of X.
Yeah.
Which really comes down to, I'm not worthy of success. Which then you got to go back to, then now we're getting more spiritual, right? So if you believe in God, what does God say about you? Mm. Well, God says that you are worthy. If you go back to the word, then you're just, okay, well, if the word is the truth, God says that you are worthy. Now we have to believe that. Now we can work on vision.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would think that's difficult though, instilling that in someone who's just been beaten by life. And it's not even bad. I mean, it's not necessarily that people were trying to hurt that person by telling them these things, but it's just been ingrained. So
no, they were trying to protect them, in fact.
Absolutely.
Their parents were they're trying to protect them, in fact, and they don't know the damage that they were doing. Again, this is that generational trauma type piece, right? And in some, I guess trauma could be, let's take that word out for a second, because some are generational trauma. Some are just generational lessons that are, quite frankly, stupid. Like that, for instance, I used to go and recruit at universities because we had a world-class internship program. And so I would go to University of Madison, Wisconsin. I would go to some of the other universities and I'd speak to some of the clubs or the classes. And I would ask this question. I would say, how many of you, when you leave here with a degree, want a steady Eddie salaried position? And you get 95% of the class to raise their hand.
Yeah.
And 5% or less raise their hand when I say, who wants to be an entrepreneur or commission only job? And then I would ask the reasons, why do you want that steady Eddie job, steady Eddie paycheck, supposedly, for the 95% that raise their hands? And you get answer like, well, it's guaranteed. And I'd say, is it? Well, I know it's I know it, but like, you know that, I know that. Like, for instance, like back in 08, 09, go back, I wasn't at Best Buy then. I had already started my financial planning career, but 08, 09, like thousands of people got laid off from Best Buy. Thousands of people got laid off from 3M. Like all these like Fortune 500 companies are laying people off by the thousands. How guaranteed was your paycheck then? How steady Eddie was your paycheck then? Yeah. Right. So they just don't understand. So these are but they're passed down because your parents are teaching you safety. The professors are teaching you what they think is safe, telling you the safe route, not knowing that, hey, you're one bad relationship away with your boss, or one recession from that company having to make some tough decisions, and you're just a line item. As much as they love you, you are a line item, and an expensive one at that. So they're going to cut you no matter how much they love you. You're only in control when you own the business, and I would say you're 90% in control when you're on all commission, because salespeople are needed in every industry.
Yeah. So how important then? I'm not leaving mom. Mom always tells me that, she tells me to be safe, don't go out there and, be careful. You're going to get hurt if you go out and do that. Make sure you have something to fall back on. Mom always tells me that, right? Or dad does. And I love them and I'm never going to get rid of them. But how am I phasing that world out and bringing the new world in, hanging out with guys like Josh, hanging out with maybe people that say different things, say the things that you're talking about here?
Well, I think first question is, do you want their life? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe dad was an engineer, mom was a teacher, and that's a perfectly fine life for them and for you. So first is that. If it's not fine for you, you got to define what is right or fine for you.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think that for some people, like that would be just that's okay. That's a perfectly fine life. And we want to make sure that we're giving credence. Like not everyone is wired to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone is wired to be a salesperson. So I want to give full credence to every type of person out there. Is like, hey, if that life is good for you and you can answer that question, that yes, that's the life that you want to live, go do that. But do it to the best of your ability so that you're maximizing that life.
Yeah.
If not, then we got to look at some different teachings. We got to look for some different mentors other than mom or dad. Because mom or dad, although they're trying to give us good advice based on what they know, they don't know this other life. So they actually cannot give you advice on that.
Yeah.
It'd be like, so for instance, back in the financial planning days, I'd teach, young advisors coming up. Well, this young 25-year-old that I just met with wants to talk to mom or dad about the recommendations that I just gave him. Great. What does mom or dad do? Well, dad's a VP at some software firm. Okay. So what does he know about financial planning? Well, probably nothing. Did you even ask if dad at software firm has a financial planner himself? No. Well, don't you think that would be important? Because then we would know at least he had some education from the financial planner that is meeting with them. So little stuff like that is like, they're not an expert in that area. What they're looking for mom and dad is for approval, right? And so many people, especially as an adult, as a child, you're seeking approval from your parents. As an adult, you need to actually break away from that.
Yeah.
You need to lean on what's true to you, right? And that's how you'll get away from some of these generational traumas or generational teachings that may not suit you, is stop seeking approval from parents once you're in that adulthood.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, when you do make this decision to start moving towards a different direction, let's say you're working in the factory, don't expect your friends and the guys you're working with to understand. They will not understand.
Or your family.
Your family isn't going to understand. Your friends aren't going to understand. Your wife is going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, wait, what are you talking about? You work at the factory. You're working on being a higher level supervisor, right? That's has been your world for so long. So don't expect it to be easy. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. But if you're very consistent and working on these steps, like Josh is talking about, you're going to get there down the road. It is going to take time, though.
Yeah. Well, I'll even give you an example like this. So my dad owned the firm in the financial planning firm that I bought out, and that, it wasn't his choice for me to take over. It was the Fortune 100 company's choice on me. But like, it's interesting, when I separated, the easiest thing for me to do would be to stay in that industry and take a very high paying job at a different firm or a competitor. Now, first I had a non-compete to work around and all that different stuff. So when I made the choice to not do that, my dad, even high-end entrepreneur, like I was making 7 figures, he had made 7 figures in his life. He says to me, he goes, "Are you gonna be able to make enough money?" So like, just think about that. Like so my dad was high-end entrepreneur, made 7 figures, and I was coming from a spot where I was making 7 figures. And even him, when I said, I'm not going to go back and do what I was doing, and I'm going to go this different route, even he had a doubt. So can you imagine the parents that just, were making 40 grand a year, or 50 grand a year only, and that's their steady Eddie job, whether it's teacher, whether it's blue collar work or whatever it may be, they're certainly going to pass those limitations down to you.
Yeah.
If my dad did, your dad's definitely going to.
Yeah. If the 7-figure dad is, your $45,000, $40,000 mentors will be doing the same thing to you. And even college professors were the same way too, which I thought was interesting. I remember college professors explaining things to me. Here's what's going to happen with your career. And then you're going to do this. And then you're going to do this. And I was like, okay, that sounds about right. I don't know any better. You seem to be the expert here. Come to find out, they're still a college professor. Interesting story. I got advice from a really good college mentor. I mean, this guy, he really did a lot of things in the business world. Great guy, but he's been a professor his whole life. Gave me some advice the other day, and my wife brought it back to me. We were talking in the kitchen, and she's like, "Did you hear what's his name?" I'm not gonna name the guy, but you hear what he said to you? You see what he said to you on Facebook? And we start laughing, and he basically told me to regress. He told me to not give out all my secrets. I was doing a speaking gig out there, right? And I was basically talking about what I do. And it just, there's plenty of money to go around, dude. That ain't even an issue. So I was basically telling what I do on this stage, and he'd given me that advice. So exactly like you're talking about here, who are you taking this advice from, right? Who's giving you this level of advice? And I don't know what a college professor makes, but it probably isn't what I make right now. So that was it was kind of interesting that even my wife picked up on it though too.
Yeah. And like I think you were alluding to before, when you start to break free from these people, when you start to level up, even after making that decision, and then all of a sudden you start becoming successful, the crabs are going to pull you down, and the crabs are in your family. The crabs are in your friend group currently. And you're like, what the hell? These people, these strangers like us, like in Arate, are supporting me that I've known them for like a month or a year, and they're supporting me more than my own family or friends.
Yeah.
You got to remember, what you're doing is shining a light on everything that they chose not to be.
Yeah.
So when you climb up, where you're shining a light on their insecurities, on what they chose not to be, on a life they chose not to risk. So just know that that's going to be part of your battle, and you got to accept that. And sometimes you will lose some family members. Sometimes you will lose some friends. And that's part of shedding that skin, that snake skin each year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're both parents. Now we're kind of moving on to the next generation, right? So I want my kids to do better than me. I mean, it should be simple. I would have thought that was like a normal thing. I think my parents wanted me to do better, regardless of the strategies they were giving me. So how do you now, as a parent, convey this on to your kids? Because you got a beautiful family, a bunch of, we got four kids, 4 children now?
4 kids. Yeah, 11, 9,
kids,
7, 5. Yeah, so that's a great question. I actually texted my brothers, 2 of my brothers. I'm the oldest of 4 as well. And I texted them yesterday because I had this epiphany. I was like, you guys, Dad was the one. And I've often credited him this on my podcast. And Ed Milet talks about the one in each family that changes the trajectory for the rest of the family. Our dad was the one in that regard for success. But there were some things he did or didn't do that are generational traumas in our family. And just a simple example of I can count on less than 5 times that he told me that he loved me growing up. Now he's gotten very good at it in his older age, and especially as he's had grandkids, he's become a softie. But approval, affirmation, and love were not something that he showed. His way of showing that was becoming a massive success.
Yeah.
Right. My mom's was very different. Those were things generationally he chose not to change or didn't know how to change. And I just texted my brothers and I said, hey, I'm really proud of you guys because we're teaching our kids differently.
Yeah.
The love and approval, and that daddy's always here. And if love was a scale of out of 1 to 10, we're always 11 out of 10, and nothing they can do will ever change that.
Yeah.
So not only teaching them to be successful, but also be equipped emotionally better than my brothers and I were.
Yeah. No, I love that. So maybe give us a strategy. I'm a dad. Let's say I'm a dad. I got 3 new kids, 3 little kids in the house. Let's say they're acting up, I mean, how am I guiding them? What's a strategy you use, kind of like a daily thing to guide your kids?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not perfect. I screw up all the time as a dad. So just
No, no,
know
dads do
that.
not screw up.
Yeah,
Dads,
right.
no way.
Well, so I always preface anytime someone asks me like that is like they're asking as if I'm the expert, and in some cases I may have some good tools and strategies. The other thing I just want to make sure of is like none of us are perfect, so like
Just
don't
to
have that
emphasize,
standard.
just to be clear on that, I think it's always nice though to get an outside perspective, like a
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
dad's idea. Like, oh, I didn't think about that. I've been moving this direction. Just kind of like an additional thing to their arsenal already, I guess.
So one of the things like I have my third girl is has some anxiety and sensory issues. And so it's recognizing those and then also letting her process her emotions and also letting her know at the same time, like when she is really, really upset, is like, hey, it's okay to feel these. It's not okay to lash out and project those feelings onto everyone else in this house.
Yeah.
Right. So it's getting on her level, me crouching down, getting on her level. She's 7 and talking her through that and like, asking questions like, would it be better for you knowing that these are my two things? It's okay to feel that. It's not okay to make everyone else, for lack of better words, make everyone else's life hell while
Yeah.
you're feeling that.
Yeah.
Would it be better to go to your room right now until you're settled down? And then just like talking through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another
That's
one
awesome.
that I give my 3 girls and teaching my son now as well, but particularly the girls, as I had 3 girls to start and then a son last, is society's view of girls and like the pressure that girls feel, whether it's body image wise or beauty or whatever it was. So like really early on with my oldest, I started saying, hey, where does beautiful come from? And even before she could talk, she'd point to her chest and say her heart, right? And I said, where's your heart come from? From Jesus,
That's awesome.
right? So like God is love and we were made in his image. So therefore we are love. And so our hearts are what matter the most. So beautiful comes from the heart. And that's, so I just want to like continue to reiterate that to them as they continue to grow into themselves, get into those teenage years and all the different shit that they're going to go through.
Oh, get ready.
Is continuing to, yeah, I know it's coming faster than I expected. So those are a couple different tools. And then one of the other things that I do that are really, really inexpensive that you guys can get is a deck of cards, affirmation cards off Amazon. And I hate plugging Amazon. So if you can find them elsewhere, please do that. But real simply, I think they're less than $10.
Nice.
And basically it'll read an affirmation. So I go into their room at bedtime. They pick a card. I just kind of pull them out and they usually pick based on what colors they like, essentially what the card looks like more than what's written on it. They read the affirmation and then there's 3 questions on the back that like help them give examples to that affirmation.
That's awesome. That's an
Yeah.
actual applicable skill you can use.
Yep. And
That's
just
really
do it as often as possible. Again, I'm not perfect. I'm tired. I'm doing 75 hard right now. So 2 workouts a day. So like at time at 9 p.m., we're just trying to rush them to bed because we're already past bedtime and they got school in the morning. I don't always do it, but as often as we can, we're sitting down to do those.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of guys that are listening to this are working a lot. There's a lot of things going on in their lives. And if you just take a second and incorporate a strategy like this, you'll be shocked at how much better your relationship is with your kids down the road. Right. I mean, it may be a little bit, they might give you a little bit of feedback, kickback a little bit. That's how I have 3 girls too, man. I understand. But down the road, dude, you are going to be blown away at what they've remembered. Things like this. Remember that card thing we used to do, Dad? Remember that card thing? Like that helped so much. That was so cool. Dude, I have a 22-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And they remember everything. Like everything. So make sure you are pouring into them and giving them real strategies and just showing that you give a shit about them, right? Showing you care, like walking up to them and just telling them you care. It's a huge, it impacts their lives like more than you could ever imagine. My 22-year-old today is at a sales deal. Actually, she's at a conference where she's selling high school trips, like the senior trip.
Oh yeah.
So check this out, and I'll tell a real quick story, and then we can move on. So her senior year, this company comes to her and says, "Hey, if you sell these senior trips, you'll get a free trip." So she sold the most trips in the state of Colorado right away that year, in her senior year, within like a few weeks. So she gets to go on it. So a couple years go by. She's an adult now, right? They call her. They're like, "Hey, do you want to run the state of Colorado? Like run the whole region? Like, and get kids to sell high school?" So that's where she's at right now. Came out of nowhere too. Like, but we were always pouring into her. I mean, she's 22. She's like 5 years older than the next daughter. So, and she was young by herself for a long time. We would pour into her a lot, just constant things like, "I bet you could do this. Hey, why don't you give this a try?" Just constant things. And certain things were hers and certain things were not. She was not into sports. She hated them. Yeah. We always gave her the option to do sports and stuff like that, but she's like, "Nah, I hate this stuff. I want to be part of this club." Like, cool, jump, go join it. And then she'd be the best at that. So I think it's just consistency and offering them all these different opportunities. Even if you don't have a lot of money. I mean, I get that. If you're not like financially killing it, you don't have to do the highest level of each thing, but there's so many different opportunities out there your kids can really jump on.
And I would say quality over quantity, right? So for a lot of dads, they are working. You may be working 2 jobs. You may be working 14-hour days. You're dog tired. Like, I get it. So remember quality time. So like even those 10 minutes I'm doing those cards with them, that's super quality time. The 10 to 15 minutes for me to take them to school, and instead of just dropping them off, I walk them in, give them a hug, and tell them, "Be a leader, spread your sunshine, have a great day."
That's awesome.
And so and then the last tip I'll give so we can move on is don't ever tell your girls to be good. And what I mean by that is I read this in a book. I can't remember. Maybe it was Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, which is a great book for guys raising little girls, by the way. It's talked about how we don't tell little boys to necessarily be good because we don't expect them to be. They're rambunctious. They're wild. They're whatever. I was as well. But little girls, we tend to tell them to be good and fit into this box and be good student. And really what we're quelling is their entrepreneurial, their independent mindset.
Yeah.
So I always tell them if I'm going to leave them on a trip or whatever it may be, and I've even said this to my son because he's going to be rambunctious anyhow, is be respectful of your mom and be helpful to your mom.
I like that. I like that. That's good. That's really good. I don't have any sons, but I would have run with that because I think that's really important too. Is also it's how you react, how you are with your wife around your kids, right? As a father, are you showing respect to the mom, right?
Yeah.
So if you're constantly degrading the mom, putting her down, or arguing all the time, they see that. They're always seeing that. If you walk in the room, "Hey, beautiful," give her a kiss. How was your day today? And they see this every single day. They're going to expect that from the guy that they end up marrying, right?
It's caught, not taught, right?
I like that. That's good. Caught, not taught. That's good. I like that. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. You run a podcast. Kind of want to dive into that real quick. What made you want to start a podcast? You're already doing all these, great things. You got a big family. You're killing it there. What made you want to do a podcast?
Well, so I started when I was at the financial planning firm, and it was more of a way to give back to the community on all the leadership skills that I had learned over the years. I was fortunate to work with a company that was really, really big into development. And so I became big into developing myself, and then also developing others. And I think part of it is I did have a little insecurity about not finishing school. Like that actually meant something. It did a little bit in our career. A lot, I was the only managing partner out of 76 in the system that did not have a 4-year degree. Wow. So I just continued to try and prove myself through continuing education, advanced education on my field. So I got designations. If you go on LinkedIn, you see CLU, CHFC, these fancy designations behind my name.
I was going to ask you about that too. I saw that. I was like,
well,
I don't know what that means.
What's funny is they mean nothing now that I'm not in the financial industry. So, but they did then, right?
Yeah.
But I've also continued to just grow in consuming every book possible. I do not read fictional books. I only read nonfiction. So I've continued to grow in that respect. What was the original question? I just went off on a tangent.
Podcast. What brought you into that?
Yeah. Thank you. So I started the podcast to give back, and then I also my chief marketing officer was like, "Hey, this would continue to build your brand, would help in progressing the firm." So I did that, and it was called Inspire People, Impact Lives. Really, did we call it that? Because that was my mission statement. That was the mission statement of the firm. Inspire people, impact lives. So when I left the firm, I went through that reassessment as, hey, do I still want to do the podcast? The answer was yes. B, do I have the right messaging and kind of marketing, or do I want to rebrand? Because right now would be the time to do it. As I'm rebranding my whole career, right now would be the time to do the podcast as well. So I did that. So if you scroll back on the podcast, it's now called Spartan Leadership. If you scroll all the way back, you'll see all the episodes of Inspire People, Impact Lives. The studio has changed vastly. I don't wear suits anymore when I record. Used to do that. So I have like $30,000 worth of suits collecting dust in my closet. They're all custom done. So beautiful suits. I actually wore a couple last week, so that was fun. I was at a thing in Dallas, but I had to dust off the shoulders a little bit.
Did it feel weird?
But anyhow, no, it actually, I'm comfortable dressing like this and in a t-shirt. And so I feel like I can go either way. Either way is me, because I spent, 17 years in a suit. So, and they're all custom fit to me. So I slip them on and they feel great still. So that's good. I'm staying in shape. But the podcast for me is legacy, and it's also continuing to grow the brand right now. And so for those that might think about doing a podcast, you may not be huge. I may not be huge in the relative of like huge podcasters. The point I would always say is like the world needs your voice. You're going to connect and attract an audience that may otherwise not ever have been attracted to podcasts. I just had a guy from Wisconsin on that I met on an airplane, an Arate guy. We didn't know each other previously. He saw my Arate shirt and said, "Hey, what's up?" And it was only the symbol, right? There was the black sweatshirt with only the symbol. So only someone from Arate would really recognize it, because it didn't spell out Arate. And he runs a podcast called Blacktop Banter. He started a paving company, and now he started a marketing movement around Blacktop Banter. I was like, and I asked him about that. I was like, dude, talk to the people about this. Like, there's probably not more things that are more mundane or simple than blacktop or pavement, right? And you started a whole movement for blue collar people that are out there on the streets doing this type of work and getting some sense of pride around it. Like, speak to that. So it was really cool to hear him speak to that and tell his story. So that, like, literally, if he can do it on pavement or blacktop, and then sprinkle in leadership nuggets and sprinkle in personal growth and all that different stuff that goes along with it, like, you can do that with anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the LandLife podcast. I buy and sell dirt. Dirt. That's it. Just land. And right now, have we talked about land one time? Not even. Well, I guess your 80 acres. We did talk about your 80 acres. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many things in your mind, especially as you grow we're going to say a man. As a man, you grow, right? You start experiencing all these different things. And if you don't let the world know about it, they'll never know about it, right? They'll never know what's in your mind. Number two, the second thing that I think is super important is you're building a library of you. This is a library of you. This is like your profile in life. And this doesn't go away. If you put it on YouTube, it's there forever, right? If you put the stuff online, it's there forever. Your business partners, anybody who wants to do business with you, is going to immediately look up Josh Kosnick, right? Anybody who wants to do any work with you, boom, boom, Josh Kosnick, and all this information pops up. Now, what is it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it polarizing? Right? No, it's something you want for them to see, right? Another thing too, your kids will see this forever. Mm-hmm. This is a library that your kids can go back to forever. Your family can see this forever. So whereas our parents and their parents, the stories that were told were just told by word of mouth, right? With you guys, with us, with podcasts, and we're just being online in general. This is going to be on there forever. These stories can get told correctly forever.
Yes. You think about that family tree, how that's going to change from now on. Like, you think about like a great grandfather that was in World War I or something. And those are just stories passed down. Yeah. But now you have Facebook, Instagram, all these different tools, YouTube, podcasts, whatever, that the story is directly from the horse's mouth, just like you were saying. Think about how, actually, that's kind of cool to think about, is like a family tree. And then like, here's the library of this person, PJ Riley. Here's the library, like literally think of like a digital family tree. And like, you just click a link and you can go down the full list of great grandpa PJ Riley.
Yeah.
And hear everything that he has to say.
Everything. That'd be so cool too, because I would love to know my grandparents, I don't really know a lot of what they did as young men. We hear stories and you know how stories, they either get exaggerated good or they get exaggerated bad, but they don't really get told correctly. And so that'd be really cool to see the actual story, and hear their voice, see what they talk like, with their mannerisms. Were they like me, where they constantly talk with their hands? Or right? Or were they just very sedentary, like, oh, here's what I do, and just want to know who they are.
Yeah, it's really cool to think about. Maybe I just thought of a new business for us, PJ.
Dude, I think I'm in.
The family trees.
Absolutely. I like that idea too. I'm definitely in. All right, Josh, how can people get hold of you?
So I'm at Josh Kosnick, Kosnick on all social media platforms. So not hard to find. The podcast is called Spartan Leadership, which I was shocked that title wasn't taken.
No kidding.
When I went to look for it, I thought Michigan State University or someone would have picked it up, but no, it was free and clear. So we went with that because Kairos is a Greek word, also a biblical word. And that's why I named my coaching and consulting company. So I went with the Greek theme. Also, Spartans were some of the baddest ass men to ever live, and women for that matter. So I went with that, and having a lot of fun interviewing some kick-ass people.
Right on. Yeah. Spartan Leadership Podcast. Don't forget to check it out. And and
the website is just joshkosnick.com. So
okay. So people wanted to contact you, joshkosnick.com is the place to go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right on. Josh, here's the big question I ask at the end of every podcast. All right. This is intense. I don't know if you were prepped for this, but this is one of the big ones. This is this is one of those Mensa level questions. All right. If you, Josh, could buy land anywhere in the world outside of the 80 acres you already bought, where would it be and why?
Let's say my 80 acres is pretty majestic, so I would keep this. But if it's not here, I would probably occupy an island somewhere, Caribbean, Bora Bora area, somewhere to detach, have just everything I need in one spot. Kind of like Necker Island that Branson owns?
Yep.
Something like that. That'd be cool.
Private island, your own private island in the Caribbean. And you can get away from that beautiful weather in Wisconsin.
Well, get away from beautiful weather in Wisconsin, get away from U.S. government taxes and oversight, a whole bunch of shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a ton of little islands out there, and there's tons of them for sale. But I always wonder, can you actually buy them as American citizens? What are the legalities of this? I know there's freehold, there's leasehold, all these other options, but
the biggest thing is how do you get goods and services to the island? It's like you go buy an island in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But where's the closest grocery? Where's the closest gas station? Where's the goods and services that you're actually going to need to supply that island once you're there?
We need a big boat. We're going to get a big boat. We're going to drive that boat from whatever one of the bigger islands over to your island, drop off all our good stuff, and then.
That's right.
Right on, Josh. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, PJ.
I appreciate you, man. Take care. All right, guys. Till next time on LandLife.